When we want to find solutions, critical thinking is essential. It's problem solving by thinking outside of the box.
It's a new way of learning, and it's the wave of the future.
It's not your traditional educational experience anymore. You walk into classrooms and they're noisy and kids are engaged and they are taking on real problems in their own community and solving them.
They had an opportunity to come together with Mayor Ginther, and he came to them to problem solve and to really think about some of the big issues that are happening in the city and how can we solve them.
If we can keep that passion going, if we can keep the vision going for these children, then they're going to be able to tackle really whatever comes their way in the future. I get really excited when I think about that.
We guide our children to have independent thinking, critical thinking. They can analyze the information. They can think about what's right, what's wrong.
It's connecting the classroom to the community and making our students active change agents.
A large part is our students' attitude. It's how they approach challenges and overcome them. Challenges don't have to be scary or uncomfortable. They can be exciting and rewarding to overcome.
We're always learning things new about science.
I wrote a 20-page research paper, and I enjoyed it. Now that I'm looking back at it, I really enjoyed the entire process, because in the end, I opened my paper and I was oh my God, I really wrote this entire 20-page paper. And at first I thought it was gonna be super hard, but just thinking about the process, I fell in love with writing.
And it can be hard to problem solve. So I think that kind of imagining what it might look like and then putting that into real life can really help.
But if you make a mistake, it's okay, because mistakes, it's easy. You can kind of fix it.
There is a real commitment to push them and encourage them and find that niche, find that area that really encourages those students to move forward, to try things, to make mistakes, but to get back up and learn how to do that successfully.
We also want our students to apply critical thinking to themselves. What goals do they have? What do they want to do when they graduate? By thinking about their future early, our students start the process of considering who they aspire to be, beginning in pre-K, and that's exciting.
And so we're looking to really emphasize the idea of Porch Over Graduate starting cradle and ending career.
Having long-term goals and short-term goals help them to realize what is your ultimate purpose, to learn as much as you can to graduate so you can go on to college and whatever else you choose to do, so that you will be ready for the world and you'll be successful with whatever you choose.
That helps them grow as people, because then they can see the world through a more critical lens.
WCBE is a hub for local news and music that acts as an invaluable source of entertainment to the people of Columbus and the surrounding area.
It's Columbus radio at its finest.
I love WCBE. I don't think that there's any radio station quite like it anywhere.
We want to continue to be a pillar in the community, an asset for the Columbus community, especially when it comes to music.
It's a dedication and love of music, of storytelling, and then to sort of combine those two things.
We're getting information out about festivals, things that enrich the public's experience, and again, things that you may not see. I think we're also drawing attention to local issues.
And most importantly, it'll stimulate people's curiosity. It is intended to be an educational experience, and that is what got me involved in radio to begin with.
I really get to spend time educating people on the microphone, and I feel like that's one of the best parts of WCBE.
This is great, right? It's public radio, it's smarter, it's better, care about art, care about people in town.
I love WCBE, and I can't imagine Columbus without it.
When we think about creativity, we're talking about students using their imagination to build something of value. And when our students learn with creativity at the forefront, It opens doors to new ways of approaching challenges.
I just got chills because in all my years in the district, we have not had this level of support for this pathway of learning that speaks to the whole child. Expression in the arts is something that we encourage. Our students have many opportunities to participate in concerts with the bands, strings, orchestra, art exhibitions.
And what's exciting about this attribute is that creativity isn't limited to the arts. It's applicable to everything our students do.
Creativity is about how you think. It's about freedom. You know, it's freedom to challenge the norm.
Everybody's creative in their own way. I feel like even if you don't think you're creative, trust me, you're creative. It kind of relates to like being unique to me because everybody's unique.
I like being creative. Like, I love like mixing colors and stuff. I like to be creative because usually I wouldn't show my talents because I'm always shy.
Creativity actually helps a lot with studying. If you're not creative, you're gonna copy other people.
And that's the key. We want our students to come up with their own ideas and their own ways of learning to understand what methods work best for them.
I'm curious, which means I just keep wanting to learn more and more and more and more.
That's where innovation is going to come from. Not from, the folks who've been doing it the same way for the last 30 or 40 years. It is going to come from the newer generation.
How do we set them up? We give them the tools that they need to be able to do whatever it is in life that they want to do.
We have the Adobe suite of products at our disposal now for our students to use at schools and at home to unleash their creativity. I'm so happy we're able to provide the tools finally now so that they can go and unleash it.
When our students use their creativity to build something of value, there's no limit to what we want them to create. It could be artwork, a dance performance, a new business or a new idea, a club or a movement. Value is defined not by who you are, but by who you impact.
It's propelling our students to what's next.
We have to make sure that we open up the doors for creativity. Don't try and change their trajectory. Allow them to be creative, allow them to discover the world.
And that's the power of being a creative person, a creative thinker. I know I can do anything I put my mind to. And I love being who I am.
At the end of the day, the question is why? Why go to all this trouble? Why make changes? Why take a new direction? The answer is simple: love. We are doing this for the love of learning, the love of teaching, love for our students.
One of the, I think, amazing things that have come out of this process is this idea that we will never be normal again, right? We have pushed through to a space of innovation, and we want to keep that and harness that energy.
What has not changed is the dedication and the drive. I mean, that is really why we're here.
What gets me up every morning is the love of students.
We are all about the kids. We put our lives on the line for the kids.
I knew I love you, I love you, I love every single one of you, and I have to continue doing what I'm doing to make sure that you have those opportunities to be successful.
So I feel like that's what created like my love for learning, is because like I was really close with my teachers and my principals and all of that stuff.
Like, I know she knows that she built me, and I'm always grateful for that.
When I grow up, I want to be a teacher so I can teach.
And when you spend time with children, you see potentials and you see the future, and you want the best for them.
Our children, our students are always, always the center. And that is what Portrait is helping us do, to keep them the center and define what that looks like.
This is much more than just words on a page. It is a new day. Now is the time to put these words into action for our students, for our community, for us.
It is hard to get that synergy going, where your partners are also hand in hand with you with the same goals, and that we have in Columbus. We're blessed to have that in Columbus.
Now we have the board that will back her up and continue to push and really get us where we need to be so we can be a model of urban education.
At a time when COVID-19 has upended school years and transformed what learning is, how it feels, and what it looks like, I need you to know your graduation is important because we need you.
Yes, this year was tough, but you have proven to us that you're tougher.
Columbus City Schools has gone on to graduate students from Harvard, from Spelman, from Morehouse, from Duke, from OSU.
These students are the future of Columbus.
When people thought that we couldn't, when people said that we wouldn't, we did.
In Columbus City Schools, Portrait of a Graduate is the cornerstone to ensuring our graduates are well equipped to thrive, not only globally, but right here in Central Ohio.
Our work is just beginning, and we look forward to taking this journey together.
I worked in commercial radio for 40 years. When I arrived in the Columbus market, WCBE was my go-to station when I was not producing another radio show for my employer. Don't tell them that. I volunteered my services. 9 years later, I find myself as the general manager for the station that I love, that is near and dear to me.
My name's Mike Taylor, and I'm a radio broadcast specialist. That's what they're calling me these days. A lot of the artists we play will not be played on any other radio station in Central Ohio, maybe not even in the country. So when we find someone we like, we try to get them on the air. We try to get them into Studio A.
My name is Allison Holm. I'm the afternoon news anchor and reporter, and I've been at WCBE for 25 years. We once had, when I was on doing the newscast, we had the monitor start smoking and catch on fire. And I was in the middle of a newscast, and I couldn't stop. And so I had to wait until I had a sound bite and run to the door and shout out, "The studio's on fire!" and then run back in to finish that story and then go into the next one. So I'm pretty good about ignoring distractions.
My name is Maggie Brennan. I've been with WCBE since my internship since 1993. We'll be excited to have more kids involved and more programming with that, whether they're going to be hosting some of the shows or behind the scenes, or even some of the bands playing live in Studio A.
It's a nice, wholesome place where you can see how the radio gets made. I've been involved with the station since I was a teenager. Around 14 years old was the first time that I went in and did any volunteer work for them. The people who work there know their stuff and make a really great environment for a learning opportunity.
Before I came to WCBE, I was a professional jazz musician. And then I got a job at Fort Hays. On my first day of teaching, I ran out the door and I ran next door and I knocked on the door and I went and I said, "Who's playing that stuff? That is really cool." And then the secretary said, "I think you need to go in the back." So she let me in the back, and the next thing he was going to play was a piece of jazz music, and I have an encyclopedic knowledge of it. So I started telling him exciting things about the thing he was about to play. He said, "Wait just a minute." And he put a mic in front of my face, and for about 10 years then, I was Jim, the wacky sitcom neighbor next door. And I would just barge into people's radio shows and start talking.
It, number one, gave me an opportunity to reunite with Jim Manieri, who I knew from when he was in college and I worked at another radio station. And as a matter of fact, I hadn't had that type of conversation about music probably in 10, 15 years. That's one of the reasons why I do this.
So fun. I mean, I'm a radio girl anyways, but I also am the receptionist, so I get to greet them, bring them into the station, welcome them, and Chris Robinson Brotherhood came through, and Chris Robinson, I just love the Black Crowes, so meeting him, I was kind of geeking out a little bit.
I'm in my 23rd year, and probably the last handful have been the most rewarding and fulfilling. That combination that I love of music and story, the sort of story behind the music, that's a really good combination. When a listener says that they value that and they got something from that and they now are a fan of that artist, that is truly inspiring.
I've had a long relationship with WCBE. Years ago, I started a little show called Cinema Classics with a buddy of mine, John DeSando, and we've been talking about movies on there for years. And then the opportunity came up. There was a job opening, and I thought, wow, I love this place. I love the people that work there. I love the vibe there.
I still feel that it is a group of people who are making this all happen. And we're all counting on each other and building on what each other does. And that's an unusual and awesome experience.
Our first attribute for our students is adaptability. Simply put, we want our students to both accept and thrive in a changing world.
One of the things is that the landscape is changing, and as the landscape changes, we have to make sure that we are preparing ourselves and our students for what is out there.
I think that adaptability is so spot on, especially for this exact situation.
We have thought about what is the future of our kids? What is the future of work? What is the future that we need to prepare them for? Well, guess what? That future just met us right now.
When the pandemic hit, our kids had to...
Welcome to today's FAC, that is Finance and Appropriations Committee meeting. Today is November the 9th, 2022. We're glad to have everyone here. Let's begin, if we can, with attendance.
President Adair.
Present.
Board Member Brown.
Here.
Board Member Cole.
Present.
Mr. Green. Ms. Johnson. Mr. Jordan. Mr. Miller. You do not have a quorum yet. I understand Ms. Johnson is on her way and should join us shortly.
Awesome. We expect that. If we can, today we'll basically walk through, of course, approval of the minutes, our monthly finance report, a 5-year forecast, a self-sustaining funds update, and our fiscal year 2023 budget requests. But let's get started with approval of the minutes. And of course, we really can't because there's no quorum, dagnammit.
Go.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead with our monthly finance report.
That'll be great. Thank you much, Chair Cole. This is the monthly financial report for October. Revenues ran about $174,000 under plan for the month, dropping the above plan variance for revenues to $19.4 million. And expenditures were about $2.4 million under plan, increasing the year-to-date under plan variance to 26.6. On a year-to-date basis, and percentage-wise, revenues are about 4% above plan and expenditures are about 8% below plan. That drove the cash balance at the end of October to about $46 million above plan, or just under $395 million. Looking at the major revenue components, there was no property tax activity this month, but just as a reminder, I look at property taxes and then that first sub-bullet called property tax allocation, which is also property tax related. Put those two together for about a $2 million year-to-date variance, and we're within 1% on property taxes. So this hasn't changed, but just wanted to point out that it's very much on plan. When we look at state aid, it was about $472,000 below plan this month. As I mentioned to you several times, we have had a change in our state share index, which is going to begin to diminish our state aid. I expect this under plan variance to potentially continue for the coming months, and we'll watch that closely. Looking at other revenues, I do have some good news to report to you. I had a recent conversation with an IRS agent. Maybe that's a funny way to start the story, that I had some good news. And had a conversation with an IRS agent. But we figured out where the problem was. We've got the forms in. We thought they had them. They didn't have them. Whatnot. We got that all worked out. All of them in. We're looking for 4 payments here pretty soon. I confirmed that on the phone just this week with a gentleman. We had to make sure we had all the boxes checked appropriately. So those are just under $250,000 each. So we should hear in the near future, at least during this fiscal year, get about $1 million, close to $1 million in on those qualified school construction bond interest rate subsidy payments. That will get us through December of this year, and then we'll be eligible to file for another one in June. We have debt payments June and December of each year. So in 23, we'll file for another one in June and get back on schedule. On the other revenue side, as is always the case here, it seems, the pilots lead the way, and they were about $1.7 million below plan month to date,
but 18.8 million above plan year to date, and that's the largest contributor to this variance in other revenues of almost 26 million. Medicaid reimbursement, I mentioned to you we got one earlier than we thought, which was a lag from a previous year, so that was a $4.5 million catch-up number there. And I think in this table on this slide will help show you in that other revenue, that almost $26 million variance, that pilots and the Medicaid reimbursement are two that have contributed to that. Interest on investments is up 1.6 million, but don't judge anything by that because that's often a timing of when coupon payments come in and when things mature. So that just will have to bear itself out over the year. Although the revenue from that source has been down, but rates now are going up, so that's a bit in our favor. We are looking very carefully at our time horizon for investments because of the forecast. When we have projected deficits, you might want to plan for that so that you're not short on cash. But we're handling that internally. Moving on to the expenditure side of things, total expenditures for the month were about 2.4 million below plan, and that takes us to that 26.6 million, or about 8.5% below plan. Personnel this month was pretty much spot on, 312,000 under plan, so we were very, very close. And that left a variance in personnel pretty much unchanged at just over 20 million, or about 9%. That's typically kind of high, but as I said, when we constructed the model for the plan, we front-end loaded the first quarter. Probably shouldn't have done that, and when we look at the graphs for personnel, you can see here that the behavior is very much like last year, but we're running it's just under plan, but the behavior is following right along. You can see there for October, this is salaries and wages only. You can see where October we're back on plan, but a little bit under for the month. I anticipate that that we'll see how this transpires in the next month, but we may begin, because we front-end loaded, we may be a little bit over plan along the way. And just so you know, like I said, this is about a 9% variance. I really like to be plus or minus 2% maximum variance on this, which at this point would be about 4.7 million. On an annual basis, that'd be close to 14 million plus or minus. But we often, we can stay within that band. I realize that's a large dollar amount, but a very small variance amount. And so this 20 million is I'm going to watch it closely to see if, is the plan really off, or is there something over in the personnel side behaviorally that we're doing something different that would cause it to run this much under. So we'll take a look at that. November and December will be telling months for that as well. And I have in there, benefits are essentially doing the same thing, so you can see that as well. For the non-personnel items, purchase services, supplies, and capital outlay, all running under plan. 4.2 million purchase services, 3.6 million supplies, materials, and 1.1 million in capital outlay. Remember that this is based upon the May forecast. In the May forecast, I used budgeted amounts. The November forecast, I've ratcheted those down based upon a historical spend. So once once the board adopts the November 5-year forecast next week, then we'll plug the November forecast in, either for the November report, but certainly for the December report. And then these variances should all change, hopefully get a little bit closer to plan. But then reports after this will be reflective of differences versus the November forecast, then differences versus the May. So we'll be using the most recent information we have going forward. When I look at a comparison this year to last year, the takeaway here is that we are building a cash balance like we have in past years, and we have more revenue received than last year and more expenditures than last year. The cash build last year at this time was about 90 million. It's 160 million this year. That 70 million difference is 10 million in state aid. That's more than last year. 25 million in pilots. Remember, the pilots came in because of that state law change. There's a net 45 million favorable cash build between advances in and transfers out. Advances in being the almost 80 million that came back from the ESSER advance, and the 36 million that went out for the capital budget. That was a transfer out. And then then 12 million reduction in that cash build because of increase in operating expenses. So, you know, it's good we're building cash. We know where the increases are. You know, so we're, you know, this is just informational, really. Now, the next big influx of cash will be in January when we get the property tax revenues in. But between now and the end of the year, we should begin. You know, this will be where we eat into our cash balance down to December as expenditures exceed revenues. So, you know, all pretty much on target. Nothing alarming here to call your attention to. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer that before we move on to the next agenda item.
Committee? Awesome. We may move on. And can we reflect that we do now have a quorum, Mr. Treasurer?
Yes. 422.
Welcome.
Is one I have.
It's a bear getting down here, I understand. I do understand. All right, 5-year forecast.
What I wanted to do here is simply update the committee on the discussions. You know, we had this in October. I then took it to the board in the second meeting in October, and then again the first meeting in November to talk about those areas that we had some assumptions that we needed to come to an agreement on. This committee had suggested some modification, you know, keep the capital budget in, but perhaps at a lower level. Didn't have any problem with my assumptions about state aid. I was, it was gosh, what do you call laughter that is uncomfortable? There's a phrase for that. But in talking with Board Member Brown after the election results, I'm not so sure that my assumptions about state aid are as conservative. I've flipped overnight to saying, well, maybe I'm a little bit too. You remember I told you I'm not real good at predicting state aid. And
so
doggone it.
Are we allowed to factor in what we expect the next General Assembly to do?
Not now. I'm not touching that with the 10-foot pole. We'll
Absolutely
wait till,
not.
We'll wait till February when we start hearing about the budget. But anyway, the state aid, the personnel, the capital budget. You know, you had made some recommendations. I talked with the board and got their feedback. And what I wanted to share tonight was simply where the board landed and what I'm taking to the board next week for an approval. Again, state aid, no change from my original assumptions. Personnel, we kept that assumption of 2.5 in the out years outside of collective bargaining agreements. But we dropped any personnel on ESSER coming over. 88 positions didn't have a huge impact, and there's a larger personnel base over in ESSER that we've got to make some decisions about. And everybody on the team understands that, and that's going to be a big conversation between now and the spring. Capital budget, we did drop it to 20 million. And let me say this, one of the focus or the goal that I picked up from the board was that what would the forecast look like if FY26 went positive? So these assumptions helped get us there, but we had to add one, the general fund budget that we're going to be working on this spring. First, we're going to hold that 24 budget and beyond at 23 levels. That helps. But additionally, to get 26 positive, we, the team, need to identify about 35 million in additional reductions beginning in FY24 in order to make 26, you know, reach that reality that 26 is positive. Now, a lot of things are going to happen before we get to the 24 appropriation resolution in June of next year. We'll go through the personnel discussion. We're going to go through the non-personnel part because I parked that 35 million in purchase services just as a holding placeholder. So we're going to meet with all the budget managers and say, look, you're held at 23, and this 35 million reduction, I believe, is about a 7% overall reduction. So tell me what that means. What are we not going to do? How are you going to realign what you're doing to live within those resources? Some may come back and say, we can't do that, or this major critical service, we can't do that. So that means you have to look elsewhere. But those are some of the targets that we're going to be struggling with. Have not yet considered the impact on personnel. That's the other area you could look for if those reductions must reach reality. So this is just a planning target. We'll know more in the spring, and in the spring, we'll get a picture on state revenue. Don't know whether it'll, it can go one of three ways: better, the same, or worse. And I think just time will tell. But for now, this gives us that backdrop against which we can do our planning for this spring and into fiscal year, pardon me, 23-24. With that in mind, then here's just the picture of our ending cash balance. The blue line you can see dropped off. 25 was negative, 24 million. 26 was negative under my original assumptions by 217 million. These revised assumptions result in shifting that cash balance line more positively. You see here, FY26, I think it ended up in like $300,000 or $400,000, but in rounding, that's zero. And the other telling thing from this graph is notice that things that you do early in the end of the curve, the earlier you affect that curve, it's like a lever. And so look at how much the out portion, the future end portion of that graph, look how much that moves. We moved 217 million in 26, but out in 32, we moved 700 million. And that's just a factor of the trending and the multipliers that occur over time as you have compound growth in those numbers. So just a lesson in, boy, if you see a problem, the earlier you act, a smaller change here has a larger impact. And if you wait too long, your change has to be very, very big. So that's what we did on the 5-year forecast. It'll go to the board next week. We'll get it filed, and then we'll move on to planning and developing assumptions for the next round, which is what you do because this is an ongoing process. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer that relative to the 5-year forecast, but it meant just to update you as to what the changes were and where the board landed.
Any questions? Awesome. I just want you to can we also just reiterate why it is we have to make sure that we're working towards solvency in the 5-year forecast as being a state requirement? I just want to make sure folks who are listening and viewing this committee meeting understand that.
Well, number one, we're not allowed to run a cash deficit. Number two, we have no end of the year borrowing authority. So unlike a business that might have a line of credit, that's not us. So we must be cash positive. In a forecast, also, what's important is that the forecast dictates whether or not you can sign long-term contracts. And it could be long-term service agreements, or it could be longer-term agreements like collective bargaining agreements. So it's important that we make reasonable assumptions such that we can operate knowing full well that those assumptions require some behavioral change on our part to make that come true.
I thank you for that, Mr. Treasurer. I just think it's important to always remind folks of that big qualifier as one of our major drivers for why we make the decisions that we make. So thank you, and then we don't come to them lightly. All right, moving on to self-sustaining funds update. Forgive me, thank you. Mr. Treasurer, can we now take the minutes and gather quorum?
You may.
I move we approve the minutes.
It's been motioned, second?
Second.
Awesome.
President Adair?
Yes.
Board Member Brown?
Yes.
Chair Cole?
Yes.
And Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
The minutes are approved. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now, self-sustaining funds.
Great. Thank you, Chair Cole, committee members, and those visiting us online. Thank you for this opportunity to give you a quick and brief update on our self-sustaining funds. Today, let me start by saying, for those of you online who may not know, our self-sustaining funds are funds where they operate as a private enterprise type fund, meaning they have to generate their own revenue to cover their expenses. So that's the term self-sustaining, how we use it in our district. So with that, today's presentation, we've asked some of our team leaders to share with you highlights of their programs, to show the relationship between our student outcome-focused governance, as well as give a brief financial snapshot of where they expect to end at the end of this year. this technology in front of me here. Here we go. So today we have 4 areas. They are food service, adult ed, latchkey, and WCBE. Joe Brown leads the food service. However, Maurice Odom is going to be actually presenting today. Ed O'Reilly is here representing adult ed, and Dr. Baker is here for latchkey. And we have Paul Brown presenting for WCBE. Each of them will get up and they each have about 2 slides to present. It'll be about a 3 to 5 minute quick overview, and they'll share highlights of their programs. And we kindly ask that you wait till the very end for questions. So if you can gather questions, we'll be glad to entertain them at the end of the presentation. As mentioned, student outcome focused governance, we try even in our self-sustaining funds to align to the district priorities which are listed on your screens. I won't read them to you here. So each of our members will share that alignment and really tout the achievements that they've been making over the years and what they plan to do this year. So at this point, I'm going to back off and stop talking and invite Dr. Baker up first to begin with our latchkey program. Dr. Baker?
Good afternoon, Dr. Baker.
So I have 3 key areas that I'm going to speak to you tonight about regarding latchkey. First, our enrollment and staffing. So we currently have approximately 700 students, which is an increase from this time last year. We are still a little bit below pre-pandemic, but we are on the rise. I'm also excited to share that we are fully staffed for both teachers and instructional assistants for the program at this moment. I would like to share our Step Up to Quality rating. So as you know, we are evaluated by the Ohio Department of Education, and all of our sites are 4 or 5 star rated. So we have the top ratings. You have 11 sites that are 5-star rated and 10 that are 4-star rated. And then lastly, something that we're doing this year with our staff is that we're being intentional about our professional development, and we're ensuring that it is aligned with the district's goals and guardrails, and specifically the professional development that we're focused on right now is aligned with prioritizing a whole child focus and ensuring a culturally responsive staff. And we're doing that by having our staff to participate in training provided by Ohio State University, and the training that we just recently completed looked at diversity, and so it addressed the whole child. So it's looking at implicit bias, equity, and those practices and how they impact not only in the classroom, but also in the wraparound services that we're providing after school with for our students. So when we're looking at the finances, last year we would have been in a deficit, but we were able to utilize ESSER funds, and so that allowed us to actually end with a cash balance. And so we were in the green, approximately $360,000. So when we're looking at our current enrollment, and if we project our expenditures based on that enrollment and our revenues, we're in line to be at approximately $1.7 million in revenue and $1.9 million in expenditures. But because we have that cash balance rollover, it will cover that shortage, and we'll still end with approximately $182,000 in cash.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. Next up, we're going to ask Maurice to give us a quick update about the food service program.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Holden.
Thank you for the opportunity to stand before you and give you an update on food service. Food service continues to contribute to the district priorities. We focus on foundational system of support because we know that a child that is hungry isn't learning in the classroom. In regards to foundational system of support, we believe all children have the right to a nutritious breakfast and lunch. And so, with that being said, the district continues to participate in the community provision program, community eligibility provision program, and that program allows all students enrolled in the brick and mortar of the building ability to help receive breakfast and lunch. Greater than 95% of the revenue from food service comes from the USDA reimbursement program. And then food service currently is operating in the pre-pandemic model, which is the model of food service operating in our schools prior to pre-pandemic. If you look at the historical trends and projections, you'll see we had a hiccup during the COVID era. Through ESSER funds, we were made whole. This year, we're projecting a positive cash balance. Our fund balance projected to be $21 million at the end of this school year. Thank you.
For your report. And next up, we have the Adult Education Program, and Mr. Ed O'Reilly will present here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Thanks
Mr.
for this
O'Reilly.
opportunity. You know, when the board talks about strong learning communities, it's wonderful that you understand it doesn't stop at graduation. So the amount of adults that we impact each year is tremendous. Since August, we've gone from 270 adults to 774 adults just in our Aspire program. So we are truly impacting a lot of folks. So with that comes staffing. So we've added a new program that's going to start next month, is HVAC, a commercial program. So we've already added 3 staff members, 3 part-time staff members to staff that. So they're doing the prep work and getting ready to launch that program in December. One of the, in the new programs and classes, we did something for the first time this past summer. It was the CSEA Summer Institute. And we provided training classes for current staff members who want to become paraprofessionals. We did training preparation for the test. So not a lot of people, but 7 of the 11 passed that test and became paraprofessionals. So we moved some people through that process. We also offered 25 different online classes for our support staff that they took online, and they were taking Spanish and sign language, Microsoft Office, so things that would help them in their roles in their jobs. So again, about 35 staff members took advantage of that. So we continue to work and find ways to not only impact the adults in the community, but the adults that work for us. In the Adult 22 diploma, we've always been very good at the HSC, high school equivalency, helping people through GED. We've also always offered the adult diploma program where they come pass work keys, get a 12-point credential, and then get a diploma. But we've never been able to offer the 22 plus, which is credit recovery. So we started that program this year as well. So we are the only Aspire program in this general area that offers all those different pathways to graduation for adults. So we're very proud of that. So in terms of equitable opportunities for all, you know, number one, we work hard to get our Aspire grant. That allows us, those 774 Aspire students are attending for free. That removes a huge barrier. In our HVAC and our practical nursing program are nationally accredited, which means we are able to offer Pell Grants and federal financial aid for those programs. So we're removing hurdles to make that equitable for all. So thank you.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we would like to invite Mr. Paul Brown up to the podium to speak about WCBE.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brown.
Thank you for allowing me to update you on the WCBE transformation. With me is Greg Mobius, the General Manager of WCBE. The photo that you see is the celebration that took place on October 26th at the radio station when we introduced our new music-centric schedule, reduced our non-personnel expenses by nearly 50% per month, and launched our renewed focus on student opportunities in the multimedia career pathway. Curriculum alignment. We created the City League sports program so that student athletes can participate in the podcasts that are aired on 90.5 FM, YouTube, and WCBE TV. This Spire audio production device will allow students to create their own podcasts and music. Program development. We have implemented a process for creating new student-centered programs. We are currently working with community organizations that will offer student opportunities as we develop new programs. Examples are the Ohio Department of Commerce, Columbus Music Commission, Children's Hospital, and many others. March versus current. Our projections back in March were based on refreshing the WCBE schedules starting in July of 2022. However, it took longer to get staffing, programming, and marketing in place. Moving forward, we plan to continue to become more efficient as we install the new audio automation system that will free up WCBE staff to work with students and focus on increasing revenue. Next slide. We continue to look for better ways to increase revenue and reduce expenses while focusing on student outcomes. Grant dollars are a potential source to help offset transfers in, and we now have a staff person who will be focused on grant writing moving forward. Good things take time, and we are creating something groundbreaking and unique for our students. This has been a group effort, and the WCBE staff has really leaned into this transformation. So I would like Greg to speak to you for a minute about his team. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Morbius.
We've assembled quite a team, a talented and knowledgeable team, who have stepped up to implement our new approach. Many of our music hosts, our new music hosts, have decades of broadcast experience, and even one was an instructor for 10 years at Fort Hays, so he's come full circle. As you know, we've been a public radio station since 1956 and an NPR affiliate since 1971. As Paul mentioned, we recently dropped our expensive national NPR news and information programming in favor of a unique, locally produced mix of music and community-oriented programs as well. One of our goals is to become self-sustaining, and we believe we can do this by increasing our underwriting. We are confident that businesses will step up to support this new approach. We will increase our membership dollars. We're confident listeners will step up to increase their support for the radio station. And Paul mentioned grants, such as our annual awards we receive from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We wish to entertain, educate, and be a showcase for the people, programs, and achievements of Columbus City Schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Chair Cole, I would just like to recognize we have an awesome team, and the finance, we love working with them, and I appreciate everyone coming and presenting today. I just wanted to put that on record. We have a great relationship here, and it's awesome.
Thank you.
With that, in conclusion here, I just want to remind the committee that these self-sustaining funds, as you can see, are about $33 million here that we're dealing totality with all four of them put together. And these, like I said, these managers do a great job in running their programs. We do support them in every way we can financially. And this is the conclusion of the update. So at this time, we would be glad to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions, committee? Yes, Mr. Brown.
I have one for for the adult education. What does ASPIRE stand for? I'm sorry. ASPIRE, what does that stand for?
It's the name given to the state program that it covers certain things. It covers high school equivalency, so the GED program, all the adult diploma programs, and English speakers of other languages. And that's our largest program, helping folks new to the country learn the language.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Just a quick one for WCBE. Is there an update at all on how much we have attained in underwriting at this point in time? I think it would be helpful moving forward as we get an idea of how closer you're growing towards self-sustainability and solvency.
Yes, we're looking at that currently, and what we're waiting for is our new schedule and our new brand to kind of take hold, and in a month or two we should have a lot more data to answer that question. But nothing has really rolled off or fallen off since we made the switch, so we're going to look at projections in a few months when we have better data.
Awesome, and I do understand you guys just nailed something recently?
I'm sorry, yes, we have a couple projects of people that want to give us underwriting, so yes, that is correct. A couple potential ones we're working on.
Awesome, I thank you so much. All right, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted really more of a comment than a question, but based on the announcements, based on everything I've read about where WCBE is headed, I like what I see and read. You know that I have been critical for a number of years about WCBE and how we're using it and its relationship to our core mission of educating our students. I like what I see, and I hope that the underwriting and other support comes through so that this can be self-sustaining, as well as a good device for an organization like ours, for Columbus City Schools to do what we do best.
Well, thank you very much, and everything is going according to plan, so we'll continue that way.
Thank you.
Yep.
If there aren't any additional questions, we can move on to the fiscal year 2023 budget requests.
Thank you, Chair Cole. We have two requests that are before the committee. This is a precursor. These requests will actually be brought to the board next week in a formal fashion. Here is just informational for the committee. The two requests are to increase appropriations in the area of the Human Resource Department as well as our legal department, and both requests are $200,000 each, and these were prior to, these requests came in after we've adopted our 23 appropriation levels, and these are for litigations in both of these areas. So we'll be presenting those to the board formally next week.
Understood, understood. Any questions about this request for expenditure? Seeing that there aren't any, is there a motion to adjourn, or do we have any closing comments, Mr. Treasurer?
No closing comments from me. I think this was all pretty self-explanatory, and it's all pretty much good news.
All right, awesome. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Without any nays, we may adjourn.
Thank you.